thought I'd do another video on mindfulness of breathing. There's a lot of disquiet and unrest, a lot of protest at the moment, and people are trying to establish the right moral outlook, the right moral path. There's an awful lot of people trying to tell other people how they should be behaving, and the reason I called this video Genuine Virtue Goes Unnoticed is because it genuinely does. And that when we practice mindfulness of breathing, if we're doing mindfulness of breathing in the right way, then we will be practicing genuine virtue. But don't expect that to be noticed by other people. So it's undoubtedly the case, I'm sure we're all in agreement, that prejudice, intolerance are horrific qualities and attitudes, qualities of mind and attitudes to uphold. They create terrible suffering both for oneself and for the world around us. It leads to a greater sense of alienation, a greater sense of separation. It's taking us in the opposite direction of peace, happiness and well-being, and we are telling one another as human beings, we're telling one another that it's not acceptable. Fair enough. Okay, so how do you deal with intolerance and prejudice? Where do those qualities lie? Well, some people maintain that they lie in institutions, but where do those institutions originate? They originate in the human mind. All prejudice, all intolerance ultimately is located within our own minds, and it's one thing to tell other people to check their prejudice and let go of prejudice and intolerance and the like. It's another thing to actually do it. And what we do when we practice mindfulness of breathing is we pay proper mindful attention to what arises. So, okay, we're looking at the breath and we want to get calm, we want to get concentrated. But what is it that prevents us getting calm and concentrated? It's our passionate resistance. Our passionate resistances, which in Buddhism we call the hindrances, the 5 hindrances, they're what prevent us from getting calm. They're what prevent us from becoming peaceful. So in order to become calm and peaceful, you have to deal with your attachments, you have to deal with your aversion as they come up in meditation. So mindfulness has this component of inner honesty. Well, mindfulness really is inner honesty. It's being absolutely honest about the wholesome states that arise and the unwholesome states. The skillful mental actions we employ, but equally the unskillful mental actions we employ. And when we're acting out of our attachments, when we're acting out of craving, when we're acting out of aversion, we are practicing unskillful states of mind that prevent us getting calm and getting peaceful. So meditators take on the burden of what it is people are asking us to do. We are doing the very thing that people are protesting about, and we're taking it upon ourselves to look at and acknowledge the prejudice, the intolerance within our own nature. And the way it works is that as you become aware of, as you're mindful of, and you learn that it's okay to acknowledge those things. It's unpleasant, it's painful, it digs into our self-image when we discover that actually we have those kinds of qualities within ourselves. But when we do, and when we acknowledge, mindfully acknowledge, note, label, be with those unwholesome qualities, then that clear comprehension of what it is then prompts the arising of wisdom. And it's the wisdom which is saying, that is genuinely not in my best interest to follow through on that sentiment, that thought. So the intolerance is seen to be detrimental both to you and to others. It's just seen to be such. We have an innate wisdom, we just need to activate it. And that's what mindfulness does, that's what the mindful noting does. It activates the wisdom component in us, which acknowledges that this indeed is unskillful. It's not in my interests, it's not in the interests of anyone around me, so I drop it. I might experience the discomfort, but in acknowledging and allowing that discomfort to be there, you're able to see that the discomfort, the painful feelings are transient. And that's the critical thing. That's the development of the acknowledgement that acting on the impulse, the prejudicial or intolerant impulses, is based on painful feelings. The painful feelings are themselves transient. They arise due to some memory, some thought, some contact arising. Then there's a feeling, and then there's the reaction to the feeling. As you let go of the tenacity with which you hold on to trying to get rid of the painful feelings, the easier it is to see that painful feelings are transient, which means you don't have to act externally in order to try to get rid of the painful feelings. You see that they are, as it were, self-liberating. If you just observe it, the painful feelings arise, the painful feelings pass away. And as a consequence of doing that mental work, it is far less likely that attitudes of intolerance and prejudice will reach the point of being vocally communicated or bodily intimated, if you see what I mean. It is less likely to become physical action in the world, because we get used to seeing those aversions within ourselves, we get used to acknowledging them mentally and accepting the painful feelings and the discomfort and allowing the painful feelings to pass away. So the result of that is you're left in a state which is free of intolerance, which is free of any form of prejudice. But that's an undefined state. It's not you're demonstrably being tolerant. There is no awareness of either tolerance or its opposite, intolerance. There is just this undefined being. So there's no way for somebody externally to be able to recognize the virtue of what's unfolding. There's no possibility of recognizing it, because it's got no signs. It's just you're not noticed. You're invisible. You're quiet. People can't see it. So that's very interesting, because then you get this kind of next order of intolerance towards you, because you don't appear to be doing anything about the problem of intolerance or the problem of prejudice. But you have. You've been practicing virtue, genuine virtue, because you went through the true spiritual burden of coming to recognize the intolerance and the prejudice within yourself and learning to let go of it. So then the heat comes on you for apparently doing nothing. So then what you have to do is you have to go through the same thing again, because then people say, you're not doing anything, why aren't you helping? And you're like, well, I am actually doing what you've asked me, which is to let go of the intolerance and the prejudice within my own nature. And as a result, I'm peaceful. But people don't understand that. So then you have to deal with any painful feelings and discomfort and aversion that comes as a consequence of people not seeing you as you see yourself. And people blaming you where actually no blame is warranted. And the strong tendency to want to justify yourself. Say, no, it's not like that, because that will actually just renew any kind of conflict that there is. So you have to go through the same process. It interests me that tolerance is only something that has to be practiced by intolerant people. Think that through. To actually have to practice tolerance means that you disagree with You are not, fundamentally disagree with something, but then you're saying, but I will tolerate it. Oh, well, thank you very much. Oh, you'll tolerate it. Thank you very much. Whereas what I'm talking about, genuine virtue, is neither tolerant nor intolerant. Because it's taken the burden, the spiritual burden, the true spiritual burden of acknowledging the faults within us, the unskillfulness within us, the unwholesome within us. And if we do that, then as a consequence, we are not reinforcing the conflicts. And then, as somebody who practices genuine virtue in the right way, you then look at people posturing, flying the flag of their virtue publicly, telling everyone else how they should be behaving, and you just wonder, have they actually gone through this process? Have they actually taken responsibility for the prejudice and the intolerance within their own nature? Or is their public posturing actually an exercise in intolerance? And who is actually prepared to do the real hard work of inner honesty, of looking at what actually comes up when you meditate, of acknowledging it, of recognizing that what it is that truly is causing conflict in the world, letting go of it and being peaceful as a consequence. So, I hope that makes sense. Something to think about. And certainly, for anyone who's practicing mindfulness of breathing in the right way, these are things which you will be confronted with. But like I say, if you acknowledge that is the true path of genuine virtue is not to try to advertise yourself and insist how other people should perceive you as a virtuous being, but taking it upon yourself to do the hard work of acknowledging what's actually going on within you. But don't expect anyone to notice.